Aloha, this is State Representative Bob McDermott coming to you with another McDermott's message. Hey, today I am thrilled to have fast becoming a new friend of mine, Darryl Vincent of U.S.VETS. Darryl, thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, we were talking Saturday night, and we've gotten to know each other because my other job is the Navy League, which is different than what you do. You focus on homeless vets.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you tell us how you got into it, where you're located. I know where you're located, but tell us where you're located, and then we'll talk about what you can do for the vet. Okay?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, U.S.VETS is a national company that started over 22 years ago, and Hawaii started in 2002. And the actual homeless veterans program started in 2003. And I was hired as the first program director to open the program out at the Hawaii site.
Is it a nonprofit?
It's a nonprofit, and we've been around. We have, any given night, 4,000 veterans are sleeping on our facilities across the nation, and we have 11 different locations, and Hawaii happens to be one. We have 2 locations in Hawaii, but one's veteran specific, one's out in Waianae that's serving homeless families, including veterans as well. And to be honest with you, I've been in social work for the last 20 some odd years, and I was working at the Institute for Human Services as the clinical supervisor.
You have an MSW, I see that.
Yes, sir.
Master of Social Work?
Yes, sir. And then I was, they were opening up the program in the VA. I was working with the VA at IHS, and they were saying, hey, there's a position coming out here. You may want to apply for it. And my boss came down, my future boss, and interviewed, and I was lucky enough to obtain the position. I've been with the organization for the last 12 years, and now have oversight over all 11 locations of all the executive directors.
Certainly, for you personally, a big jump in responsibility,
Yes,
going from a social worker at IHS to running 11 other social workers and this facility, and then the Waianae facility too. So you've really grown into the job, I guess.
Absolutely, and it's been a blessed staff. I always say you hire people smarter than you. And if you're able to do that, you'll be able to maximize what you do and have other people cover your deficits and be able to do what they do well. And we have a lot of smart people working for us, doctors and clinical social workers and you name it.
So let's talk about the homeless is all over the newspaper. And my perception of it has always been it's kind of in 3 groups here. And because you deal with it, I want to get I'll ask you some questions. My perception is you got the 1/3 roughly is the alcoholic and drug addict who I've always viewed don't want to quit till they want to quit.
Sure.
You can put the program in front of them, you can put the AA book, you can put the services, but to me it's always seemed, and we can discuss this, that you got to touch their soul. And how do you do that? Or they just get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Correct.
The other 1/3 is the mentally ill. That's the hardest one to get our hands around because the courts tie us. You can't make them take their meds, right?
No.
So if a guy believes it's normal to have a shopping cart and not bathe for 2 months at a time and not, have stuff in his hair and look like something we can't even describe, if that's the way he wants to live, he has the right to live that way, right?
Technically, yes, that's correct.
So even if you give him his meds and he's good, you commit him for 48 hours, he's good, you get him on the schizophrenia meds or whatever it is, he's good. Once he stops taking them, he drifts off in the shadows of the life again. So that's, I don't know how you fix that.
Okay.
And then the other 1/3, I would say, are bad luck, lost a job, between jobs, got in a fight, the brother threw them out, got no place to go. So is that about a good approximation?
Yeah, I guess the best way I can label it without getting into specifics of what percentage it is that the number one thing, you're correct on all the things you just said, but the number one thing that is caused as a common denominator across all those subpopulations that you pointed out is poverty. Because as we both know, there are many people living in their homes that have substance abuse, mental health problems, and have hard luck. There are far more people with substance abuse problems living in homes that are homeless.
Right.
So substance abuse and mental health merely exasperate from the fact that they're living in the streets. It becomes something that becomes a routine thing, and it gets even harder to kick, as you pointed out, because you're living in a situation where you feel hopeless, you medicate yourself, and it's a vicious cycle.
Self-medication.
Vicious cycle. And then the hard luck, people who come get homeless just because of hard luck may turn to alcohol and drugs, and that was not even an issue before they got to the street. So our main job is to focus on the poverty in the home. How do we get you inside of a home or a program to get you ready to live on your own? The whole idea is for all of us social workers, is to work ourselves out of a job. Our job is to get you to the point where you don't need us, that you're going to be able to do this on your own or have minimal interference.
So you're like a life coach?
We have life coaching, we call it, making sure that we're teaching life skills, people to be self-sufficient. We are a firm believer that people have their own answers. It's just up for us to give them the opportunity. And so you pointed out, sometimes you have to be ready to have that opportunity.
Let me ask you a question. A single mom, 3 kids, for whatever reason, she shows up at IHS. Mm-hmm. As I recall, at least back in the 80s, that mom could go to the welfare department. She could get a check that day for emergency shelter, and she'd get food stamps that day. The check certainly wasn't enough for to get what we would call a decent apartment. But she could get a 1-bedroom or maybe a studio. Now she has 3 kids. It's not going to be nice.
Right.
Or she'd have to partner up with a family member or something. But they would have some resources. Is that still exist?
I wouldn't say it exists that you can get enough money to move right in. We have different programs that do that. We call that rapid rehousing. So even like at U.S.VETS, we have a grant that allows us to take money. People can be literally living on the street. We can pay their first month's deposit. We can pay their rent. We can pay the electric bill. We can pay it for a certain amount of time too, not even just the first month, until they're able to stabilize themselves and take it on themselves in addition to services. And they have those type of grants for people that are not veterans as well. So they have those grants. It takes a while to get enrolled to. I won't say it takes a while, but it's not instantaneous. We're not going to cut the check that day. But it's a process to get you into the housing as quickly as possible. And until then, what we try to use what we call a bridge bed approach. It's for transitional programs and emergency shelters to not run a program, but put a person in the bed so they're sheltered now, and then saying, hey, while you're here, we're going to work this process to get you into permanent housing to the program I just pointed out. Much better to be sheltered doing that than unsheltered doing it.
What is because your finger is on the pulse of this, what is the cheapest apartments you can get right now?
Good question. I would have to say probably in the downtown area if you're going to get a studio. My guess is telling me 800 to 900 range, just for a studio. Hawaii has a very high cost of living. Affordable housing is something that we in Partners in Care, which is the continuum of care in Oahu, fights for at legislation time all the time to make sure money is going into the trust fund and different avenues so we can build affordable housing. But we're not going to build our way out of this problem, but we still have to advocate for it. We have to say, hey, let's continue to build affordable housing. But we also have to work with the community and landlords to make them understand the rent to these type of tenants that we'll help with them with. We don't just say rent to anyone. We're going to help you facilitate that rental unit so people can get off of the streets and be into housing, because that's our job. So it has to be a communal approach from the legislators.
What about group homes?
Group homes, U.S.VETS does a group home. And when I say group home, we have a bunch of veterans living together.
Yeah, 5
5 of them, no more than 5, living in a home. They share it. And we did it with our younger veterans, our OIF, OEF veterans, the ones that just came back that didn't actually fit into our program. Most of our program at that time, 5 to 6 years ago, was Vietnam vets. Then we had these 20-year-old kids coming back, 23, 24, 3 different tours of duty. The program didn't really mesh well with what they needed. They were going to college. They didn't want to sit around on the weekend and just play dominoes. They wanted to go out.
The crusty Vietnam veteran.
The Vietnam vet is more set in, and to be honest with you, the Vietnam veteran is still about 45% of our homeless veterans, and it's a direct correlation to our brothers and sisters that came back and were not treated with reverence. And it's a disconnect with themselves. Yeah. You can see a lot of veterans that do not want to be associated with the known entities that help veterans because they still have that damage of not being accepted. Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
We become the facilitator between us and the VA. No disrespect to the VA at all. They're doing great service for veterans. But back when the Vietnam War vet came back, their connection to governmental resources and things were very, very limited, and society didn't accept them. They were shunned.
Every veteran can get health care. Most people don't know that.
That's correct.
But it's based on a sliding income scale, right? So if as 10 years ago, if you made more than $40,000 a year, you didn't qualify.
Right.
It's probably gone up now. But so if you're indigent, you get free care.
Correct.
But if you have a job and you're working at Domino's Pizza, you're not going to get free care if you're making above a certain threshold.
Right.
And then it's prorated below that.
Correct.
You can go, but you have to pay a reduced rate.
That's correct.
I always had thought it was free for every veteran. You had earned it, but I guess the demand would be so great that they have to.
And my understanding is that they have, and you're probably correct and have more information on that, but I'm almost positive that there's some basics that are free for everyone, but then there's some things that you have to, as you just said, on a prorated. They're all entitled to get the health care, but you're right, seeing a doctor, and then you become lower on the priority, as well.
You're low, all right.
Right.
You'll never get seen.
Well, if you're somebody who's relatively healthy and you're not homeless, I would assume that the appointment's a little bit further out than someone who's indigent, as you pointed out, needs care. And obviously, our VAs across the nation have been working on that, as we know from the past history of some things.
Yeah, they have. They've had to do a better job. So you're focusing on veterans. You got a good program out there. I hear good things about you. You're doing good work. Now, take off your U.S.VETS hat and put on your social worker hat, your IHS hat.
Okay.
How do you handle the situation at Kakako? And recognize 1/3 of them are Micronesians, so they don't get welfare. They can't get that cash payment, however small it might be. They get food stamps.
Sure.
How do you handle that? How do you get them off the street? And also culturally, it's my understanding, they like to, very Pacific Island, they really believe in the extended family where 20 people in a one-bedroom apartment is not unusual. Right?
Well, obviously that's a complex problem with many different solutions and we even in the homeless community have different ideas and conflicting opinions of how you're supposed to handle that. We all agree on, first and foremost, is that the federal government, if someone has to step up and start also paying for the services need to be done for the people that are coming over and need our assistance. I think everyone across the state of Hawaii would agree that while we understand that everyone has the right to come due to the compact agreement, we do have a fiscal responsibility to the state of Hawaii to help us to support this, what I call a crisis going on, of people coming in that we need to help. We want to help them. We know social workers don't want to be put in a spot where we have to talk about we can't help because we're not getting money. We've been doing it for the last 7, 8, 9 years of making sure that we're taking care of this population that comes in. Now, in our level, the problem is, or the solution as I see it, and once again, it's many different areas, is that I think our community, as well as the homeless service providers, have to continue to collaborate and talk about what are the resources that can be accessed very easily for them and start putting them into one big pot and making sure that we're servicing them and giving a fair share of what needs to be done with them, plus the population that's from Hawaii. I would like to treat it as you do with any other homeless situation. As you pointed out, the problem is not being able to get on food stamps, but it's not a problem of you can still work. So our job is to make sure that we're getting people employed, making sure that we're giving them access to some sort of housing, that we're getting them in a nurturing environment so they can become independent.
How do you, the Micronesians don't have access to a lot of the welfare and stuff.
Correct.
We have about, I think last thing I read, 75 units in CAM 4 housing that are not habitable at this time.
Okay.
They have to go under renovation. I would rather put the folks in there and say, look, this isn't up to snuff. I just want you to know, but you're off the street. We're going to come in and fix it while you're here. Just be advised, But here's somewhere you can get out of the rain, and they'd love it, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of times there are ideas like that, what you call thinking out of the box. If it's not being a danger to the person, and it's basically you can live in it, but there's some things that haven't happened, I would say most of us would not disagree with that. We wouldn't disagree. Then maybe that would be a solution.
Well, but there would be a law that says you can't do it.
Absolutely. There's
so
federal standards.
Somebody's got to say, you know what? I'm going to waive that. Get them off the street. Get them in there. 75 families now off the street.
Another idea, as you just pointed out, another one. Another idea is, let's take some time and let's get it done. Let's fix them. I mean, how far away are you, and how fast can we do it? You know, at one time they were doing a project where the community was volunteering and helping fix those units.
They could get that done in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so if it's something of that nature, that's the other situation of how do we expedite those things.
But you're going to have to just blast through the procurement stuff. You can say,
that's the issues.
I'm the governor. This is an emergency. This is who's going to do the work. You do the work. Don't screw me. Let's just do it right. Boom, boom, and take. But see, one of the challenges you run into, and this goes to both parties politically, politicians are risk adverse. They don't, and it's not a shock to anybody, but there's not a lot of courage in this building. You were a Marine, you know what courage is. You're a Marine, you know what leadership is.
Yes, sir.
Two of those things are in short supply down here. And so people don't want to put their name out there. Oh, I did something wrong. They have good intentions, but I don't know if you remember Frank Fosse
yes.
in his prime. I mean, he would have taken care of that. he would have went down there and said, okay, 30 days, they're out of here.
Right.
And it would have happened. Now, I don't know where the hell they would have went, but it would have happened. They would have been gone. I have to believe with all these people working on it, there'll be some fruitful solution.
Yeah, I think so. I think that we put our synergy together, and we're a firm believer that.
Are you involved in this crew?
I'm involved in terms of peripherally through Partners in Care. The continuum of care is a part of the aware of the problem on a big scale, not only just Kaka'ako. I mean,
have they called you to be on that committee?
No, I'm not on the committee. No, I'm not.
Why?
But, well, probably because I've been out of town a lot, to be honest with you. So I haven't been as involved. I went to my Partner in Care meeting yesterday, and I've been out of town. We meet once a month. So I have not been involved as much in Hawaii as I'm going to be back involved. I had to do a lot of traveling. We just opened our facility in Washington, D.C., so I'm spending a lot of time there, yeah. So because of that, I'm just now getting back involved in, hey, what's going on? But I know the problem because our Waianae shelter is about 40% Micronesian. So we know that there's a problem, and we know the Kaka'ako, when you drive down there, it doesn't take a social worker to see that it's a problem.
No.
So the reality is I know that the governor is putting together some task force. I understand that some of my colleagues are getting together and discussing things. I just don't have the details, but I know the theories behind it.
You remember the shelter Lingo put up in Waianae?
It's the one we run, yes.
How full is it?
Oh, it's 90% full as of today.
Really?
89. When I talked to her director today, Gladys, we just had a review today.
How many people?
89% is that. So usually it houses somewhere close to 300 people.
Really?
It just depends. It depends on the structures of the family. So they're family units. So sometimes it's 2 in a family, 3 in a, so it's sometimes harder to say what the number is. But the better thing is saying how many units you have and how many are empty. And it's 117 units if I remember correctly, and we're 89% filled right now.
So that's a lot of people.
Yes. Yes.
Do they transition out of there?
Absolutely. We did a review today. So in the last fiscal year, from emergency shelter to permanent housing, they transferred 65% to permanent housing. That number will be even higher if we said how many went to transitional or permanent housing. Because remember, it's an emergency shelter, so people can go from emergency to transitional if that could be the next step. So it's 65% from emergency to permanent housing.
What is transitional equal?
Transitional means you can stay in the unit for up to 2 years. It's not permanent residence. You're still considered homeless in HUD guidelines, but you're living in a facility that's preparing you to go to permanent housing. We're not saying that's for everybody. As we all know, there's a housing first push. We're learning in Partners in Care and social workers that we're saying there's a bunch of different options. For transitional, it works for some people. From other people, housing first is a better option. Some is just rapid rehousing. These are all different acronyms and terms we use to say we don't want to have one size fits all, whereas before we had one size fits all. Emergency shelter, transitional, permanent. You had to go through the steps.
So if I come to you and I'm a homeless veteran and you evaluate me, you assign me a caseworker and he says, okay, this is what I think you need. A bed at the YMCA, right? That's transitional?
YMCA will be considered transitional. That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
It's nothing permanent about it. It's not a landlord-tenant agreement as far as I know. People are not living there long-term. There's usually a rest stop for the next thing.
I'm working part-time, so one of the other things is, so you have a U.S. citizen who can get some sort of welfare. They get food stamps. They get Quest or medical care. How much do you have to, what kind of job do you have to find to make it worth their while to work?
Well, to be honest with you, the welfare is not that much now. I mean, when I was more intricately involved, which is like 10 years ago, it was $418 a month for an individual. Now I know it's somewhere in the 300 range if I remember her correctly.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You're probably right.
A month. So to tell a person to compare that to a job is pretty easy. They could usually find a job. The problem we have in Hawaii is that it's a high cost of living. So just getting a minimum wage job doesn't cut it. Doesn't cut it to move you out. So we have to be innovative in getting people on career paths as well as making sure we're augmenting the income and helping them. Some of those apply for the Shelter Plus Care or our HUD programs, or we're able to help out with some kind of shallow subsidy. The state runs a program where they will pay some of their rent. So that's the key. The key is income, benefits, employment, affordable housing. Everything else we can wrap around and treat people and get them and help them with those problems that everyone has that lives in homes. And that's what I try to promote now, to say, if you really look at it, homelessness comes down to these two problems: money and apartments. Those two things. If we had enough money and enough apartments, we can put people in housing, and then the social workers can go in that housing and make sure that we're keeping them in that housing and giving them the services. Now, some, I will say, don't do that. Let them go through a program because they probably could do it on their own. The ones that can do it on their own, you should let do on your own. You never want to take away someone's dignity and do for them what they can do for themselves. But if somebody who genuinely needs our help, and they need to get placed in an apartment so they can get that comfort and get the treatment done, we see that it's effective. We're running the state Housing First program right now with Khalid Plum and Healthcare for the Homeless. We had to house 75 people in 1 year. We housed 75 people in 1 year, and we have none fall out with the Housing First model. 0 has fell out. The only person that fell out was because of a death. And even that, as much as it's sad that someone died, the way we have to look at it is that they didn't die in the street. They had a home, and they died while they were in their home versus on the street.
What kind of homes can you find them?
We usually get apartments, without a doubt. It's one-bedroom studio apartments where they're all over. They're on the west side. We have them in Salt Lake. We have them in town, right from the east side all the way over to the west side. And our job is to go out there and work with landlords, literally. Just work with the landlords and say, we're going to make sure this person pays their rent. If you have any problems with the property, you call us. You have any problems getting any problems at all, this is who you call, and we're going to make sure we take care of that for you. And if that person ends up not working out, we'll rent the apartment again and put someone else in that's a better fit for you. That's the name of the game. We have to make sure that we engage. And
so
make
they
sure
like that.
Of course, the landlords want their money. That's
yeah.
correct. That's correct. And if the landlords realize, whoa, this works, we have to get more people doing that. We have to get the inventory out.
Yeah, the inventory. One of the challenges is you can rent an apartment, I suppose, in Arkansas for $400 a month.
Correct.
But we ain't in Arkansas.
No, we're not.
We're in
no,
Hawaii.
We're not. That's correct.
And we'll never, because we're on an island and land is scarce and the climate is fantastic and it is Hawaii, it is paradise. Everybody wants to live here.
Sure.
People are willing to fly here, move here, and work for less.
Yeah.
And pay housing more. That's the price of paradise, that pain threshold.
That's what, and we all go through it. That's
so
correct.
It's particularly troubling for your guys, because where are you going to get 300, 400 apartments built? The Kakako units certainly are not doing it. Is there any plans for a new KPT or something like that?
Not that I'm not aware of. From our level, although we're going to continue to advocate, we call it macro goals of making sure that affordable housing is being built through legislation. When people want to develop something, make it so they have to make so many affordable housing along with that. I know they do tax credits. All those developers that we work with are able to navigate that system, and we are there to assist them. And nonprofits are getting more savvy in that. We realize that we have to get in the development game as well. We have to be partners with developments that want to work with us and make subsidiaries and be development ourselves, because we understand it. So we understand that's the big goal. To me, the goal that we can tackle is that I believe there's a substantial amount of inventory out there of, if we collaborate and get with landlords that are willing to work with us. If you go to every agency right now and ask them how many people they have in permanent housing over the last 5 years and put into a unit, that number would be a nice number. Does it solve the problem? No, I'm not saying it solves it. What I'm saying is we've proven that we can do it when we have enough landlords to work with and do it. When I'm telling you we'll have enough for everybody, absolutely not. But let's start where we're at. This is what we can do today. The bigger picture is we have to build affordable units. That's the bigger picture. That has to happen. We have to make sure that people are getting access to that. And then the number 2 thing is, I keep pointing out, that we all know, just every Joe that's even living in his own apartment, we have to increase their earning power. So while we're doing that, we have to do it simultaneously. It can't be operating without the other. So yes, we're going to keep doing this, but while doing this, imagine if somebody gets on a career path right now. They live in transitional housing or whatever, and they get on a career path for 2 years of going to school and picking up a culinary arts school, a mechanic, some kind of trade or some kind of license or something. So where they were when they walked in is not where they are when they walked out, and their earning power is a little bit more. God forbid they make a friend. Now let's share an apartment. Or they get themselves back on their feet. Now their family's more willing to bring them back in home. We don't talk about that either, reintegration with families. A lot of guys out here, oh, absolutely. A lot of guys are out here, they got disassociated with their families due to their drug use, alcohol use, whatever.
The whiskey nipple is very powerful.
Hey, they get what I call or get straight, and you'd be surprised how many reunifications we have with wives, families, children, parents.
Sure.
So that's also the name, the inventory. People look at it like, in Hawaii has a culture. It's not unlike when the mainland, like where I grew up, I knew at 18 I had to get out the house.
Where'd you grow up?
New York and then Washington, D.C. area, both areas.
Okay.
And my dad made it clear, college or job. And either one, you have to leave.
That's right.
But it's very common, because of the high cost of living out in Hawaii, for families to live together.
Yeah, that's I grew up an hour north of Philadelphia, and that's a very East Coast, mainland thinking for I'm a few years older than you, but we're pretty much the same vintage. That was the attitude.
Oh, yeah.
18, you go to college or you get a job and pay rent.
Right. We'll go
That's
in the
it.
military, do one of those three.
You ain't laying around the house,
No,
bro.
no. And in Hawaii, it's the same. I'm not saying they have a different culture. What I'm saying is that I've noticed that families stay together not only because it's a strong family unit, which I love about Hawaii.
The kids can't afford.
Absolutely. It just makes no sense to try to move out when you can help contribute into the household.
Right.
And we have to remember that's part of the solution. It's okay for people to reunify.
Or multi-generational families.
It's okay. So I don't want to promote that, no, they don't want to move out. We have a lot of kids that decide to stay in Hawaii.
Come to my house, my friend.
Right. And now they can contribute by paying and renting a room and so on and so forth. The economic conditions in Maryland were like they are here. I would want to live with my father too and help them pay the mortgage and what I have to pay. Right. So I think that's the key in Hawaii as well, is recognizing how much family plays a part in this.
Oh, yeah. And, well, we're winding down here. We got about a minute 42. I really enjoyed talking to you. One of the things I'll say that generally social workers, when I talk to them, they're actually my sister-in-law, my wife's sister and her husband are both social workers. They do not homeless but other stuff. But they're my family. But generally speaking, social workers I find are usually left of center politically.
Sure.
But hearing some of the things that you said, self-reliance, don't take away the person's dignity, I can still hear that the old Marine inside you, the guy who went through boot camp in 1987. I can still hear that training didn't go away. The self-reliance, the individualism.
Yeah.
You don't want to hurt them. So we got about 30 seconds.
Sure.
So what are your big plans for the rest of the year at U.S.VETS?
U.S.VETS is going to continue to serve the veterans. We serve over 300 or 400 on any given night through our various programs, including the Y9 program, add another 300. And we're going to continue to make sure that we're tailoring our program to the veterans' needs and being culturally sensitive to where we are in Hawaii. So our big plan is to be a part of the big picture of solving homelessness in Hawaii, and veterans are one subpopulation of that.
Well, Darryl, Vincent, you have certainly made an impact here. I've known about you for about 10 years, finally getting to know you a little bit. And of course, we have a common friend.
Yes.
So I want to thank Darryl, Vincent. We had a great program today. Aloha, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.